My name is Amina Jennifer. Before we even start, I want to give a trigger warning. In reality, this video is to advocate for mental health awareness and to promote sort of a universal way of achieving a collective experience of oneness where all of creation is in alignment with a singular conscious experience of love. Today I'm going to do my makeup and talk about mental health. And so there will be topics like self-harm, suicide, and just like a general discussion of what it's like to be inside of a mind that is dark. And my journey of like finding the light. What is inspiring my expression of my mental health experience and like what I've been through, where I am, how I got here is Shawn Mendes sort of canceling his entire tour in order to focus on his mental health. And I feel like seeing him have to go through canceling his whole tour in order to focus on his mind, I think reveals that mental health can affect and impact anyone, and that it is serious. So serious that it could cause someone like Shawn Mendes to cancel an entire tour in order to focus on increasing the awareness of his mental health. I think a decision like that can cause a lot of confusion and darkness for like the world, that he was going to tour. And I think that that's sort of why my heart is inspiring me to kind of talk about it, because I feel like in a lot of ways I'm also one of those people. It's ironic though, because I didn't have any tickets to his tour and I didn't even know that he postponed it until I was like guided to go and look at when he was going to come to my city, just so I would like know, when his presence was here. Yeah, so I went to go see when he would come to Washington DC, because that's where, like, that's the closest to where I am. And then the freaking ticket website was like, it's postponed. And I was like, what do you mean it's postponed? And then that's when I saw his post. The thing is that I'm not really on social media. Like, I'm on social media, but I don't look for people or look at anything really. I just post and move along. But then I kind of wanted like an explanation, and when I went to his page, it was because of his mental health. And I'm like, whoa. And then when it was like some weeks passed, and I kind of had a feeling that he was going to cancel it, because it just didn't feel like it made sense, for him to continue to tour if it got so serious to the point where he needed stillness in order to kind of figure out what's going on with him or what it is that he's experiencing. Then when those few weeks passed, after he kind of postponed it and then he canceled it, I was like, oh yeah, this is deep. But I think in reality, like, I'm proud of him for doing that. Like, I know that that probably isn't sitting well on his conscience, knowing that like a lot of people, their mental health is kind of depending on the fact that they are going to see him on tour, and maybe that's the only like moment of salvation, or the only evidence of like love that they have in their life is seeing him on tour. So I just know that there's a cause and there's effect for everything. So, and who knows, that could have created even more darkness. So here I am with some light, to shed about how wonder and Shawn in general, like, as a source of inspiration in my reality, like how I got through my own darkness, you know, and the darkness that was kind of consuming me at one point in my life. And it's so interesting because it was actually around the time that Wonder had came out where I was kind of going through this darkness that was like consuming me, and how my awareness of my mind allowed me to increase my capacity to heal. And so here I am to kind of share that awareness of the mind so that we can heal. Because in reality, like, that's how awareness works. All it takes is like someone to reveal a truth or an experience that they've had where they discover the power to heal themselves, and then they invest that experience and what they've learned from that experience into this sort of collective mind that we are sharing in the universe, that allows mental health awareness, you know what I mean? To be aware of how to take care of your mind, of like how the mind experiences healing through awareness. And I don't really know if I'm talking in circles or not. I'm really like following this kind of voice inside that's like talking, and I'm just like reading a script in my head. It's my heart. Again, I said I kind of want to like pay homage to Wonder because like Sean is kind of going through this darkness, and I know that canceling his Wonder tour is deep, you know. So I kind of just want to pay my respects to how Wonder helped me heal my mind and increase my awareness of like my most high self. So at the time that Wonder was coming out, it was during a literal like global pandemic. And this is 2020. And I mean, at the time I had took a really long break from listening to Sean's music because it was really hard for me to kind of resonate with anyone or anything, because I just didn't resonate with the world anymore. It felt like love didn't exist. It felt like the world was a war zone. And I didn't have faith in anything or anyone really except love. So it was really hard because we're going through this time where everyone is like distancing themselves, and everyone is in fear, and everyone is afraid, and no one has faith in like love being something that could heal, you know, the kind of mental state of panic and destruction that the world was in, and the fact that the isolation and the solitude already was kind of putting a damper on the mind of the world, because no one is really intended to be alone or isolated. And so again, I really wasn't listening to any of Sean's music, but then I was going through this massive spiritual awakening and also this sort of dark night of the soul. That's what they call when like it's sort of, I feel as though like a transformational phase where you kind of lose touch with who you are, really, what you are, where you are, and everything just feels kind of unknown. There's a lot of loss and uncertainty in times like that. And I feel like I have rediscovered Sean at a time where I felt like I needed his heart the most, you know, like someone with a heart like his, someone with a truth like his, someone with willpower like his, because my mind was at a state where my reality was at a state where my very, very, very first thought that would be impressed, like suggested to me as soon as I would open up my eyes in the morning, would be to commit suicide. That would be the first thing that like would come to mind as soon as I opened And in an experience like that, you kind of feel like your mind is your own worst enemy. And I know that the first thing I could ask myself, because I would just be like laying there, and opening my eyes, and this is the first thing that is impressed onto my like subconscious, is to commit suicide. And I just remember like my very first reaction kind of being like, was that me? Like, was that my thought? Did I think that? Was that God? Was that the devil? What is that? Like, who is that? And why are they thinking these things? But that was kind of the initial like experience, or my initial expression, more so like, is this me? Am I the one thinking these thoughts? Is this how I feel? Or is this like my higher self getting me to off myself? What is this? I think in reality, just the true nature of that experience was to increase my awareness of the fact that like thoughts like that have no power, and that in reality they have no force. And if I'm being honest, like if you think about it in that moment, the only thing that really stopped me from acting on those thoughts was my choice to wonder like, is this my truth? Is this who I am? Like, am I this person that could think these thoughts? Do I believe that there is a force that could think these thoughts and that wants me to do this? It's really where I am now. It's kind of fascinating the way that intelligence works in the universe, because I had no idea that like that one little moment of wonder would unlock and unleash an entirely new like capacity I have to understand what it means to heal mentally, what it means to love the self. It's so interesting because I didn't really think about that until now. Like, the first thing that I did was wonder. I think something like Sean canceling his tour, I think, can cause a lot of wonder in people's lives. Like, if he's, the guy who is this force of love, and, he has this truth and this just heart of like love, Did I already say that? Either way, he's supposed to be the perfect guy, right? But he's struggling with mental health, and he's the guy who made Wonder. He's the one that is inspiring people to kind of tell their truth and not be stuck into this darkness, this box, where they can be their own worst enemy because the world is less than ideal. And I think it can just create a lot of uncertainty, around like whether there is a reason to be hopeful. Because it's interesting the way that I'm experiencing this whole thing is like, part of me understands exactly like what Sean is going through, and then the other part of me is sort of seeing it from a very detached perspective, where like, let's say he's the only source of like life that I have, and he is struggling with his own capacity to like be a force of light in his own reality. It just gets really dark, and it just kind of feels a bit like betrayal, from like the universe, where it just feels like there's no hope for anyone. If, like I said, hypothetically speaking, if Sean was my only source of like faith and salvation, then, and he's struggling to like create that for himself, and then on top of that he has to retract from everything that he was doing to create that salvation for the world, which is like going on tour and seeing everyone and like being the guy that he is, that he's been. Now it's just kind of like, should I even have faith? Is it even worth it? That's just another way that like part of me is experiencing this, which is why I feel like my heart is guiding me to make this video, because I feel like that space is very dangerous, of like seeing somebody who has been acting as a force of love their entire kind of career, and then there comes this moment where it seems to be that that force disappeared in their own life. They're struggling to like reconnect with it, or to have a connection in general. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't. Like, maybe there really is no force of love, you know? Maybe there is no future, you know? Maybe this is just the way this life is, dark, and just not worth living in reality. Because even Sean, okay, isn't perfect. That's a really harsh reality. Really harsh reality. And I think it also doesn't, like, it ruins this reputation he has, you know, of being the perfect guy, which he also kind of addresses in Wonder Monster. You know, he kind of I'm just gonna be straight up, okay? I'm not gonna cut any cards. I'm just speaking from my heart and being honest about everything, and just speaking about this experience in its truest nature, and not just as a fan of Sean, but like somebody who's honest. The fact of the matter is that him doing this destroys that kind of reputation, you know, that faith in love, in like there being a reason, something worth fighting for, worth living for, you know, because he became a representation of that. All of his songs, damn near, are about falling in love. But it's really interesting, like I was saying, he talks about it on Monster, where he is like, society already puts him on this pedestal. And I mean, in reality, it's not his fault. He's just a guy who has a heart that is truthful, and so when he expresses it, it manifests this kind of experience of love, because you can feel that he finds power in his own heart. But again, like I said, this kind of creates a reputation of him being a force of love. And again, in Monster, he's kind of saying how like society really puts him on this pedestal, and whenever he falls, then he becomes this monster. And I feel like this is, for me, one of those moments. Like, it's a very selfish way of looking at what's happening, to view him as like anything less than a human being right now, or more so, anything more. There you go. Anything more than a human being. Because like I said, there is that sort of lower vibrational self of me that wants to be like, you asshole, like, I don't care what you're trying to do with your mental health. What about us? What about everyone that you've promised, you know, like this sense of happiness, all this faith that we've poured into you, and you're just gonna like drop it like that? It just, again, I feel like creates this lost sense of salvation, because he's created this reputation of like being somebody who creates light in people's reality. And it's just really disappointing to see something like this, like his own mental health, crush him and like cause him to literally stop doing the one thing that created this whole experience of love between himself and the world in the first place, you know? It's just a really dark thing, and really disappointing, if I'm being honest. because we literally see him create wonder. And for me, wonder is the epitome of like self-power, you know, like self-empowerment, the awakening of not allowing yourself to be a slave to your own mind, to literally increase your consciousness, to purify the awareness you have of how much of what you're thinking and what you're experiencing is your truth. I think for me, it was just empowering because it was like, whoa, this guy has like succeeded in kind of overcoming this very destructive, self-destructive, you know, low vibrational self. He even talks about it in his Wonder interview, you know. It's kind of like, was anything that you're saying the truth? Were you even being real? Like, are you even really that guy? You know what I'm talking about? That's the whole like reputation monster type of thing, where like you take all his light, right? You like use all of the love that he was like manifesting, because he was in alignment with a greater good, and he was allowing himself to be that force. You use him all up, you use him, and then there comes this moment where he dies. There comes this moment where he does something like cancel an entire tour because he's struggling with his mental health, but he was just before preaching about like being in love and overcoming conditioning and enslavement and like all of this empowering things. And it's just like, now you're this guy, now you need time to focus on your mental health, so much so that you cancel your tour of wonder. It's a very selfish, you know, and like spiteful, very hateful way that I feel like society works. That low vibrational self, you know, to see him as the enemy after he's kind of raised like your own self-esteem and your own ability, to kind of look down on him and be like, tisk tisk, shame on you, look at you, you know, to like almost see him as like a failure, that kind of energy, and not realizing like how many times he had to sacrifice his own life so that someone else could live, so that someone else could experience like his truth, so that somebody else could like have faith, have hope, so that somebody could see him on tour, you know, and have an experience of like true love. And all of that time, that effort, and everything that he's done to like create a world, you know, where people can have faith in something, and then as soon as he gets lost in the darkness that he saved the world from, he becomes the devil. But I think that that's the nature of the relationship between life and death, light and dark, good and bad, is that no matter how much you choose to be light, no matter how much you choose to give life, at some point you will always experience death. And I feel like love is taking a step back, you know, and not choosing either as success or failure. Like looking at all of the moments where he created like love or life, and he like manifested this inspiring, you know, kind of sense of self, this savior guy, you know, that the world depended on to liberate and, you know, create the awareness that inspires a healthy mind. See that guy is noble, right? See him as powerful and just fall in love with him, okay? And then see this guy right here who's dark. He has nothing to give anyone at all. Okay, like he's in solitude. Everything that society could have, he's taken it all. He's again, there's this, like, you know, there's characteristics of the devil that they say, which is like lying, cheating, stealing. And like looking at this, it would seem like right now he would be that devil, you know. But the kind of fault of society comes when you forgot that at some point he was God, right? And he was that guy that did the opposite of what he's doing right now. And I feel like the beauty about him kind of being the devil right now is that he's being that God to himself, because now he's finally giving all of that to himself. But he had to be forced into this space where there was nothing he could give to society, because he ended up being the darkness that he sort of consumed by continuously expressing light. Where do you see how that kind of relationship would naturally cause him to be in the dark? Because he would consume so much of it that he would just be it. And there's nothing more that he can do. Even if his life, you know, seemed to have been going well. And kind of like he said, like they made that premature decision of thinking that, oh, he would be able to, like, you know, go on tour. But then when he did it, it was just way too overwhelming. I think there's a lot of people that he's resurrected, you know, through being Shawn Mendes. I think that we see him kind of in this space where he's kind of on the cross now. He can't really walk around and turn water into wine and cure the blind and do all of this, because he's hammered to the cross now. It's a very like extreme sort of comparison, but I think it's accurate because that's how it feels, you know. He's not touring the world anymore. He's kind of like stuck to his body, you know, and the like confinement of feeling his mind treat him in a way that creates this like really dark imagery. And I mean, like, I'm not really biblical or religious, but this is just kind of the way that my like most high self is kind of guiding me to speak right now, where like in reality they always didn't believe that like Jesus had that power, you know, the power to come down off the cross. So it was like they saw him do all this magic, and then when he ended up on the cross and he couldn't get down, they were just kind of like, oh, look at you, you're pathetic. All of that, it was a show. I feel like that's how it feels, you know, with him right now. Watching him kind of cancel this tour, it's kind of like, oh, where's the magic? Where'd that magic go? But I think for me, every time my heart kind of guided me to use Shawn as a source of light, I always felt, it's like I always struggled with crediting him for the resurrection that I was experiencing, because I would always reach this hopelessness, this like state of being, just having absolute darkness consume me. Okay, I'm reaching that flat line, and I would like be divinely, I feel like, and intuitively guided to watch his interviews and stuff like that, and somehow I would like restore some kind of sense of happiness, like being possible in the future. And like that's really all that a person needs in order to go from being suicidal to having an awareness of their mental health. Literally, like that their mind is healthy, and having an awareness of that, that's a complete drastic change And I was experiencing that when I through watching Sean's interviews and following this sort of path of wonder that I feel like he's paved throughout time, and it's not just wonder in general, but the sort of lifestyle that is wonder, wondering why this, wondering if XYZ, or how come this and that is lifestyle, right? That continuously increases the sort of awareness of the mind and the ability the individual has to heal all of those low vibrational thoughts that keep us in the dark. And we've seen evidence of him doing this throughout his entire career, where he's always expressed this path, this lifestyle of wonder. And I just have infinite gratitude, and that's why I'm making this video, because I feel like it's one of those things where there comes a moment where creativity that is used selflessly acts in service to a greater will, a greater force, which I believe is love, and it can manifest oneness in unity, which I feel like are all things that Sean has promoted and strived for through being this Sean guy, this Superman. It's definitely a Clark Kent moment where you see him fly and then you see him without the suit and you're kind of whoa. Somehow Superman loses all his superness, because you find out he's just a regular guy in a suit. I mean, ultimately he has the abilities and the powers, they are him, but I think it's the kind of art behind the suit that creates this sort of false sense of reality. And I feel like him being this Shawn Mendes guy is his suit, where a lot of the fame that I feel like Superman gets is because he wears that suit and everybody just knows, oh, this is Superman, look at his suit, It's like Spider-Man too. All of the superheroes that have this this attire, this name that puts them on this pedestal. And I think that's a lot of the one of the fears of Superman and Batman and Spider-Man and all those guys, who wear suits, is that I feel like one is kind of that if he didn't wear the suit, people probably wouldn't find value in his heart and his desire to save the world, because it wouldn't be dressed pretty. And then also I feel like at some point every superhero kind of forgets that the world that they're saving is also their own mind. And I think the world kind of forgets that it's kind of both, it's a vice versa experience. The fact of the matter is that I don't think any superhero can live up to his name. I don't think any superhero can live up to who he becomes when he puts on his suit, because that's just a guy he can't compete with, That guy he gets all of his power to be super from everyone that he saved. And I think love is not valuing him in the suit, loving Superman or loving Clark Kent, but I want to say kind of the experience he's having as he discovers his power, and what he's capable of. And I think the whole point of the whole superhero thing is that eventually he can wear his suit and be loved, and he can take off his suit and still be loved for everything he does when he's not in it. And I think mental health, is kind of the same thing. Like when you're at your most high, your happiness, and you're having all these beautiful thoughts, and loving your mind, and you're like, oh my gosh, I love this mind, like ooh. And then when your mind is having thoughts like to commit self-harm and not loving your mind, then that also creates this split, this duality where some of you is good and some of you is bad. And I think in that moment, like how I said, where I took a moment to kind of wonder, is this me? Is this mind sort of worthy of my love? Or should I just completely discard it, get rid of it? Because it's not creating light anymore, It's that moment where you could completely be self-destructive because you see a reflection of yourself that isn't pretty. It's ugly, really ugly. But I think the beauty, like I said, was that my initial reaction wasn't to judge, but to just wonder, who are you? Who is this person saying these thoughts? And the more I got to know that person who the version of me that was thinking those thoughts ended up being I want to say my most powerful self. Because if I had not had those thoughts to look at in my mind, and I didn't have that version of me that could think those things, I wouldn't know my power to overcome the darkness that would consistently be reflected to me in the world. It's an internal salvation, those dark thoughts, right? If you aren't gifted with an experience of yourself, those dark thoughts, right? That would give you the power to heal and perceive your power to be a source of love in your own life, where you can still love your mind, even though it's telling you all these dark things. Where you can still love being in the world, even though it's showing you all of these dark things. And like I said, this wonder path, this kind of lifestyle, this kind of religious state of wonder is the only thing that creates a greater awareness of all that is happening now. An awareness that unlocks power to overcome, that unlocks power to love yourself, even though this world is full of hatred, it's full of darkness, it's full of devils, it's full of evil. But somehow you can still look at that, right? That mind that is the world, and overcome it. Because you'll wonder, is this reflection true, to the power that I know is hidden in love? Because there's a lot of experiences and evidence of love not being worth anything at all. But I feel when you achieve self-love, and this is something that I feel Sean has expressed a lot, especially in a lot of his interviews throughout time, and especially his interviews for Wonder, and the inspiration behind it. There's always this sort of duality of self-destruction, self-love that he always sort of talks about. It's always sort of present in the way he expresses his self, that there's the destruction and then there's the love. And there's always this version of you that will try to harm you. And then there's always this version that will try to love you. And I think the awareness of your mind being healthy, no matter what state or which version of yourself you're experiencing, knowing that a lot of what you go through isn't even your own reflection. A lot of the darkness in the world has its own consciousness, and it has its own reality, has its own personality, and because we live in a universe, right, where there is a singular consciousness, that darkness, right, the one that's dark and only experiences darkness, is shared by everyone. It swarms through every mind and reveals itself through those dark thoughts that tell you you're not good enough, that tell you you're a piece of shit, that tell you you're not worthy, that tell you to commit self-harm. But that's not even you, right? That is all the world has created as a collective from looking into its reflection and starving it of love. In every moment someone looked at their reflection and didn't like it, it becomes a memory stored in the mind, the collective mind, and all these collection of memories over time, right, of people looking at their reflection, of people looking at the world and being like, oh, I hate it here. I wish this wasn't happening. All the death and the destruction, all of those moments where somebody did self-harm, it becomes a memory in the universe. All those moments someone was killed, it becomes a memory in the universe of a world where, in order to find power, you give in to hating that reflection like everyone else. And really, the cure for, I feel like, depression, I don't care what anybody says, I think everything can be healed through awareness of the self, of the mind. I think the cure for darkness and depression, evil, self-hatred is always to wonder. I think this message that Sean has created, it's immortal. And I'm not saying he's the only guy on planet Earth that has ever chose to wonder, but he's the only guy I know that has expressed it almost as a religion, the art of wonder, a prayer of wonder, a style of wonder, a mind of wonder, a heart of wonder. There are a lot of religions in the world, but I think if it weren't for Sean kind of expressing every experience of wonder that he's had, I would not be here today. Okay, let's say that. So thank you. And it's interesting because even after I watched Wonder and I listened to the album, I still kind of I didn't really go into the whole listening to his interviews until my heart started to guide me back to him. But for a long time I just kind of took that whole wonder religion, and kind of made it my own. And I hadn't credited Sean for it at all. The fact that that's something that I kind of got from him until right now, really. Because I think we just live in a space where it's a time for giving, and where inspiration should be shared because it reveals power in the heart. But I think that that's also the thing about me getting the wonder from him, because it's sort of he was the source of inspiration that created this sort of path, this gateway to always having an awareness of my mind's capacity to be healthy and my ability to love my mind no matter what state I'm in. I got that from Sean. And this sort of concept of wonder, at least my heart guided me to him, and I always kind of took it and just ran with it, made it my own. I was gonna say it's kind of like a source of power, like a plug, where if you take the cord too far away from the like outlet, it'll unplug itself and you lose all your power. That's kind of what happened. And I kind of had to like track myself back to the outlet because I went so far away and I wasn't listening to his music, or I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't watching, I wasn't keeping up with anyone. I kind of like died a lot and sort of like forgot that original source, you know. And then I almost got him unplugged, I'm gonna be honest, because I just really reached a point where there's a difference between like restoring power within yourself and then allowing your self-empowerment to inspire other people and trying to restore power in people. There's a difference, you know, there's a difference. And that kind of trying to restore power in people will always leave you hopeless and faithless, because no one can restore power to a person except themselves, you know. And so there was a lot of faith that I had in the world because I could see so much power, and I was just like, why isn't anybody listening to me? Like, why don't they see the power that I see? And eventually that made me feel powerless because I saw so much potential, but no one else to realize it. And like I said, that was kind of the moment where I almost became unplugged, because I was just kind of like, okay, well, if the power that I perceive in the world is worthless in nobody, it doesn't make a change in the world when I express my perception of the world, and when I see all this beauty and love that's possible, no one cares. And so I just became really, really hopeless and faithless. And then there was that moment where my heart brought me all the way back to 2020. And not even just 2020, but like back to Sean. Again, I was kind of like almost unplugged because I didn't have faith in anyone, not even Sean. And I was just like, I don't really care what this guy has to say, but okay, heart, I'll listen to you. Like, I just didn't believe anyone. Like, I just didn't believe anything, you know. It was really hopeless. It was very like atheistic time in my mind. In order to restore my faith in some kind of higher power, it was like my heart kept leading me back to Sean. That there was like a reason, you know, and there was value in my perception and the way that I see the world, that I had stripped, you know, I had been stripped, I feel like, of all of my ability to see that power in myself, you know. Then like, do I have any power? Like, am I worth something? You know, I just seen so much love and light in the world, so much that I feel like I wasn't able to see it in my own reflection anymore. And that became a really dark time. But the only way that I've rediscovered like love for my own reflection, you know, was through kind of seeing one in Sean. That again kind of took me a really long time to accept, I feel like, because I was restoring faith in love as a force. I just thought it was powerless. And I had loved Sean, you know. It wasn't like I didn't love him. I just didn't have faith in that love. I thought it was like meaningless. And then it was also like for a long time, you know, I saw him be in love. And then there was kind of that moment again where like he's kind of built this reputation of being this guy of love songs, and then here he is like experiencing a breakup. You know, not that that's any of my business, but it's kind of the reality of like the way it looked, you know. And nobody really knows, okay, anything about that situation. And I'm not putting myself in that situation. I'm not saying that I know anything about that situation. I'm not making any accusations, okay? I just want to make that clear. But just being on the outside, it was like, oh my gosh, this freaking guy who made me fall in love with him being in love. And now he's like, not that he's falling out of love, but like, fuck, you know, where's the success here? In love, okay? It was like all of the evidence of like love being immortal, love being prosperous and successful in the world was just like really crumbling, and just there was no evidence or proof that love could ever be worth living for or fighting for. And so, like I said, even though I was experiencing some kind of like resurrection through Sean, because I was finally able to like see some kind of power in my own heart, because it kept like leading me to him, and somehow I kept like seeing faith, possible faith in love again, you know, through him. But I was still kind of like whatever. But I kept doing it and I kept doing it. And I think it was one of those moments where like I had kind of like brought it all the way down to like me being a brown skin girl. And like not just that, but the fact that I don't really perceive a need to prove that like my life mattered, because every time that I did that, it that me having brown skin, that me as a brown skin person and that brown skin people mattered, because every time I did that, I was shot, I was killed, I experienced constant death. And I think it was really humbling every time like I realized that there's no way the world will ever see that I matter. Like no, there's no way. Like there's no way. So I think it was just for a long time, because I had stopped looking at my own reflection and being like, yeah, you matter, yeah, you're brown, yeah, this, because every time I gave myself a value, it was easy to be taken away, just like that. As soon as you say your life matters, boom, you're shot. As soon as you think you matter, right? As soon as you think you have value, and then you want to go out into the world and you want to protest it and you want to provoke the world, prove to the world that, yeah, I matter because I'm brown, and we matter because we're brown, you know, because we're human, right, too. And when I realized that I could no longer go out, right, that like there was no way I could prove to the world that I matter, I realized how dangerous it was to try to do that, so I stopped. But when you do that, right, you kind of like, where's your worth coming from? I no longer have the strength or the power, right, to like prove to the world that what I have inside is worthy of being seen, that my brown skin is worthy of being seen as love. When I couldn't do that, I'm like, oh yeah, it's over. That's it. I have no more power. All of it's taken away. And I mean, that's the reality of the situation, you know. I think brown people have been programmed to believe that they know their worth of their skin. They don't. It's too infinite of a value. That's why every time it's proven, right, it's presented with an experience that proves them to be wrong. Because you walk up to the world and you're like, I matter. Black lives matter. I matter. Black power. Black pride. Right? And then the world takes a knife and stabs you right through your brown chest. Holes in your brown body because it matters, right? Deadly. To try to even speak on my worth. And so I think that because I have finally humbled myself enough to no longer like determine the value of my brown skin, you know, and who I am in this world and what it is that I have to prove, what matters to me. When I had let go of all of that, I had nothing else. I was kind of put in this space of like, I have nothing left to give this world. I'm not going anywhere anymore. I'm not doing anything because I don't know what to live for. I don't know what matters anymore. And the only thing that I had was my heart. It was the only power that was pulling me, forcing my life right into some kind of path. And it would always bring me to Sean. Like, I mean, literally. Like, I could be on YouTube and his interviews would be like everywhere, and I'd be like, whoa, what the And my heart would be like, click on it. And I'd be like, what is he gonna say? Like, what does he have? What does he have? What? And the only thing that really got me to the other side of that was wondering, like, what does he have to say, you know? What is this power, right, that keeps trying to reveal itself to me through him? I wonder. So I started clicking on all of his interviews, and there's so much truth there that I had discovered in myself. But like, again, I didn't really have any more power left to value anyone's life, even his. So I think that's why at the time I was just kind of like, what does he have to say? Like, what is he gonna be able to do? That kind of thing, where even though I was experiencing some kind of light and like inspiration and vitality from like his ability to be a force of love, you know, and being the superhero Shawn Mendes guy, I was still kind of like, I'm not giving any value to my own life. Why would I give value to you? But I appreciate, you know, like your ability to like follow your heart. And that's kind of how it was. But my heart kept pulling me. And eventually I have reached this moment where I could perceive him to be someone who have found worth in their life, you know, like they found purpose, they found power, you know, like, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. But what is the significance? Okay, why do you keep pulling me to this guy? And then there was this moment, it was on the Man Enough podcast, this like interview with Sean, this podcast. And it's funny because like I had watched it, but I never got to the end. I always stopped it before I got to the end, and I just like clicked away because I was just like, okay, cool, like, you know, he's being somebody that like has a soul. Nice. Like, great job, universe. Like, round of applause. Like, I was at that point like so low. I was just like, okay, now what? Because like I said, I'm like, if there's no evidence, right, of the fact that this means something, right, this life, this experience of love that I'm having for him, right, clearly, because my heart keeps like dragging me to him. If you're not showing me any value in it, why do I care? That kind of thing. And I remember it being like 2 months after I had watched this podcast and I had been brought back to it. My heart brought me back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we already did this. Like, and so we watch it, and right when it gets to the end, I was about to click off again, and I swear it was like as if my heart stopped and was like, please stop moving, just watch it to the end. And I'm like, fine, like this is how me and my heart kind of act, you know. It's always trying to get me to fall in love with Sean, and I'm like, why though? Why? Yeah. It's amazing how this whole thing happens, how the universe is like beautifully intelligent. And so I remember like finally listening to my heart and being like, okay, fine, I'll just watch the interview to the end. There's one brown guy, right? There's 3 podcasters, but one of them is this like brown man. And he's like, his name is Jamie, I think. Did I say that? Mind you, this is the part of the interview that I didn't watch. Jamie's like, you know, I got a favor to ask you. And Sean's like, okay. And then Jamie's like, you know, I know a lot of black girls that love you. And they really look up to you, yada, 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 you know. And he's like, you know, next time you see one and you're like doing your thing and like, you know, just let them, like let them know that you see them. Like, let her know that you see her. And I remember Sean's response was just like, promise. And it was a very empowering moment, but I feel like I also struggled with it because that was the first time I had ever felt like I had seen evidence of someone in my reality that had awareness of the worth, like the value of being brown, you know, like from Sean. I feel like in that moment, in some ways, I felt like Jamie was kind of like, you know, our most high self, kind of pulling that information out of him. It's like we could say in that moment, and to me, Jamie was like God, you know, kind of needing Sean to say the right thing, to kind of pull this truth out of him, his perception. And I think just seeing him promise, you know, to like be willing to allow like a brown girl somewhere to know that she matters, to me it like completely changed my life, because I felt like there was an opportunity in the future. There's that faith, you know, just an ounce of hope could bring somebody's mental health from being like suicidal to enlightened. And it's just simply about the awareness, you know, where in that moment I had became aware of a moment where he had the opportunity to show or to provide a Black life with a sense of like purpose, you know, that it mattered, that it had meaning, that it was seen. And he gave that, you know. He could have responded in any possible way, but his first thing was the promise. And I think, you know, a promise is worth a lifetime. And I feel like for me, it was just, I see everyone who's brown as my own reflection, and I see all of creation as my own self. And so in that moment, it was like I had knew that at some point that there was a brown girl somewhere who he like gave her a sense of being seen instead of a shot, like wound, you know. And I think things like that, having my heart kind of bring me to that state, really, I no longer wanted to like destroy everything that made me a brown girl. And I think the whole point is that if I hadn't like trusted my heart, you know, when it told me to like not turn the interview off and just wait a second, I wouldn't have understood like that a few things. A, there's power in my perception. B, there's a reason that, you know, my heart was forcing the love that I felt for him. There was purpose behind it. There was meaning behind it, you know, that there was like a reason why my heart was so in love with him and like fucking obsessed with him. But I think a lot of it is because there was a lot of worth and meaning in my own reflection that wasn't for me to determine, but for me to perceive and experience through Sean, you know, and his ability to see value in like the power society has given him to be able to look at a brown girl and she feels like her life is worth living, you know, that kind of thing. And I think it just let me know that, like, again, I think there is something worth living for, because I realized that, you know, he didn't have to say that in that moment. He could have been like, no, like, no. I think it was just like my heart giving me some kind of sense of salvation. And also because like I had already let go of the ability that I had to provide power to my own skin and value to my own skin, that I clearly needed a source that could do that for me. And that just so ended up being Sean, which I appreciate, because like I said, every time I tried to go into the world and kind of prove that I was worth like someone letting me know that they see me, you know, because I see everyone. Like I said, I view everyone who's brown as a part of my reflection, and all of creation as myself. I see. And it was just like I had a lot of respect for my heart in that moment of letting me know that, like, hey, there's somebody who's seeing too. And I think that there's no coincidence that, like, this, like, I learned value for my skin. Like, the fact that it's greater than me. Being brown, you know, it's not really for me to determine whether it matters or to have pride in it. Because I think that my brown skin is not really for me to love, but for me to allow love and opportunity to exist, to be expressed, to be experienced through me. And I feel like there's no coincidence that, like, I kind of fell in love with being a brown girl at that moment because of Sean. It's funny because, like, a lot of brown people will look at me and be like, think that I'm struggling with self-worth, right? Think that I am mentally enslaved or brainwashed or something because I'm not willing to devalue the price of my brown skin by telling the world and trying to prove to the world that it matters just so it can kill me, shoot me. Absolutely not. And so if a force, okay, of love is showing me that there is a man who looks absolutely nothing like me somewhere, who is willing to look at my skin, to look through my skin and see value, I'm gonna accept it. The fuck? The world wouldn't know the value of a black life if it shot them in the head. And I'm not gonna allow the world to kill me because it tries to get me part of this movement, right? And pressure me and disown me if I'm not a part of this movement that is trying to prove that Black Lives Matter, although it has no idea of the worth of a black life in reality. Even those who are black, right? Those who are brown. I think once I stopped trying to be God, right? And trying to determine the value of myself as a creation, trying to determine the value of my skin and trying to provide meaning to it, I think it's just like I was able to actually see, you know, true love in everything that I am as a creation. And also I feel like the experience of me seeing Sean as a reflection also wasn't something that, like, was controlled by me. And so my mind, my brain, I feel like had kind of been unconsciously programmed to, like, perceive Sean as my reflection without, like, my consent, really. Because the only way I could experience, like, a sense of salvation was through him. It made me angry for a long time until I kind of discovered the meaning and the power of my heart to always act for my highest good and kind of do everything in its power to create vitality and hope, purpose, meaning in my reality. And the only way that I, like, actually have faith in a world where, like, Black lives will matter is because I've learned to value the perception of a greater mind instead of my own. I don't think anyone who's brown will ever be able to succeed in proving that they matter. They might find someone, a force that's willing to conform to this kind of journey that they're on of achieving value. But I've learned that it does nothing for brown skin to try to think that the price I can provide to my life will actually do brown skin justice. No. And I think it's also this realization of how self-destructive it is to try to continue to prove your worth to someone. You know, your mind can become a really dark place because your sense of awareness of your worth kind of is no longer increasing. because you're too busy trying to prove the worth that you think you found. Now, you've kind of prevented and prohibited a greater awareness from increasing the amount of value that you perceive in yourself. But if I hadn't wondered, what value Sean had through my heart, even though he is clearly like valued in society, he has all these followers and all these fans and all this fame and stuff, people who care about him. I just needed more evidence. This just wasn't enough for me, because I'm not a power of the suit kind of girl. I would like to know what's powering the suit that makes it so significant, right? And that was a lot of what I was experiencing with Sean. And I think if I had succeeded in like resistance to wonder the value, the meaning of the love that I felt for him, I think I would have succeeded in viewing those kind of suicidal thoughts as a way to experience happiness. But there was something that was just like, hey, can you look at him and like give him some grace, see what value is there, and not just like automatically assume that there is none because you see through the suit and you realize that the suit was powerless. Like, just wait a minute. Let us show you what's behind it. That kind of thing. I felt like that's what my heart and my most high self was saying to me. And so, let's do mascara. I used to be afraid that my heart's like love for Sean and like the fact that it could do things like reveal to me purpose in my brown skin, and like restore faith in love and like light. I used to be afraid of it. I used to be like, yo, what is this? And I kind of had to overcome the part of myself that viewed my love for him as a destructive force, because a lot of it was always out of my control. And I thought maybe I was losing my shit, man, because all you see is the suit, man, in society, and people praising the suit. I thought maybe what I was seeing behind the suit wasn't real, and I was just going crazy. So there was a lot of psychological trauma that I feel like I had to overcome when it comes to the experience of like falling in love with someone's truth and having it kind of bring vitality and inspiration to your heart. It's kind of scary, But then eventually I began to love my heart again, my brown skin again, my reflection again, my mind, and like the health that was always there. I became aware of as I kind of stopped judging, stopped determining the value of the experiences that I was having, whether they were like me feeling purposeless, me feeling hopeless, me not knowing myself at all. Stop judging those experiences and just allow a greater perception of what's happening to reveal the love that I am, no matter what state of mind I'm in, So this is my face. Yeah. Okay, this is the end. And in reality, I pray that this allows for love to restore someone's faith, and power and vitality and inspiration to live. Maybe they can find love in their mind and have awareness of how that love that they give to their mind, even when they're in a state of being dark, creates healing of that state, right? It heals that state. And every time you love yourself, when you're in that dark state, you increase your capacity to overcome it. And then eventually, you become immune to that state of the world that is dark. You no longer live in that world, it no longer becomes something that gives you darkness in your mind, that makes you want to harm yourself, that makes you want to end it and just find an escape. And, I appreciate Sean, and apparently some kind of heart that we share, that the world shares, that's all connected, and that it always works for our most high good. And it's my heart that sat me here, and I'm really happy, that I sat and just spoke my truth. I'm not gonna judge myself for anything that I've said. I'm not gonna judge society for anything that I've said or pointed out, because I take no responsibility for who I'm becoming, because all I do is follow my heart. And a lot of the times, there's always a greater good, a greater will pulling out some sort of understanding or knowledge that I have that turns me into someone that I may not even know. So I, own no possession over my own mind, my own heart, my own body. And I don't treat it that way, like I own it, because that prevents me from determining, its value and whether it's worth destroying, whether it's worth being destroyed because it reveals to me something that I don't like. Yeah, here we are. I think I said everything in reality. Infinite gratitude for Sean and the guy behind the Sean Mendes suit. Shout out to him too. I used to be afraid of kind of expressing the fact that I always felt like he was in a disguise. That there was another guy, the guy that canceled his entire tour and posted that. Even though, he kind of said it was a collective decision, he's still the guy that did that, He's still the guy that is willing to even talk about the fact that he's going through something mentally, even though this other guy, right, Shawn Mendes, the superhero, has been just saving the world, and it's just so strong and it's so liberating and empowering that I'm glad he kind of gave that other guy time to shine, a little bit, even though he's in the darkness. It's really beautiful art, kind of, when I look at it from that way. So yeah, I pray that this finds, all who need it, and that they discover the power of true love. Okay, I'll see you soon.